Good evening. I call to order the Lake Havasu City Council regular meeting on Tuesday, May 26th, 2020 at 6 p.m. In-person attendance is suspended for this meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting will be held through technological means. Public participation is encouraged in the meeting, and members of the public can view the meeting live on Channel 4. You also can view the meeting live at lhcaz.gov/TV, or you can call in and listen to the meeting by telephone by dialing 1-888-240-2560. Again, that's 1-888-240-2560. The meeting ID is 938-418-435. We do encourage public comment as well, and public comment is taken through the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov 1 hour prior to the meeting. We'll now have an invocation by Dr. David Bybee from Community Presbyterian Church.
I just want to say I'm glad to be here. I always count it an honor, even under these circumstances that are quite a bit different, with just a few of us here during the social distancing and those looking in. So let's go ahead first and we'll pray. And I do want to say I represent Community Presbyterian Church, but also the Lake Havasu London Bridge Christian Churches. I'm the president there. And so really we support and we're part of many of the churches here in town. We come together and work with each other. Let us go before the Lord. Heavenly Father, creator of the beauty around us, fill us with wisdom and wonder of your presence, as the psalmist writes. When I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, your majestic name fills the earth. From Psalm 8. Oh Lord, help us to be good stewards of Lake Havasu City, that our community may continue to be an oasis of wholesome enjoyment, a place of learning, reflection, a place of spiritual renewal. Guide us, O Lord, through this COVID-19 crisis, that we may be responsible, but not walk in fear. Bless decisions this evening as we prayerfully come before you in the decisions that are made. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Next, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Debbie Pennington from the River Cities United Way.
Hi, everyone. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Debbie. And if you could tell us a little bit about your organization for a few minutes.
Thank you, Cal. So I'm Debbie Pennington with River Cities United Way. River Cities United Way has been around for over 100 years, but it started in Lake Havasu City in 1974, 46 years ago. It began in Havasu. So River Cities United Way fights for health, education, and the financial stability of every person in our communities. United we fight, united we win is the mission statement of our organization. Our focus is to identify and resolve pressing community issues and to make measurable changes in the community through partnerships with schools, government agencies, businesses, organized labor, financial institutions, community development corporations, volunteer and neighborhood associations, faith community, and others. So the main areas that we focus on working with is, or predominantly our resources for funding is our campaigns through businesses. We do fundraisers, and we also have donors that provide monies that go back into the community to help support all the local nonprofit programs that we have here in Havasu. And we've also been working very diligently and just want to express great gratitude for the Lake Havasu City and Better Business Bureau, the Havasu Community Health Foundation, the Lake Havasu Area Chamber of Commerce for working with us to provide the Lake Havasu Resource Alliance. with that, we've been really effective in helping with the COVID-19 and providing relief funds for our community as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for all that your organization does, and thank you for your partnership and working with Vice Mayor Lane on the LHC Resource Alliance. We appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you, Cal.
Yeah, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the roll call. Ms. Williams, if you'd like to please call the roll.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Here.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Here.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Here.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Here.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Presently here.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Here.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Item 5 on our agenda is the call to the public. This is where citizens have an opportunity to address the city council on any matter within the jurisdiction of Lake Havasu City. With public attendance suspended for this meeting, we do ask citizens to send an email to cityclerk@lhcaz.gov, and we have not received any for the call to the public. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which is item 6 on the agenda. Do any members of the council wish to remove any of the items on the consent agenda for separate discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Koch?
motion.
Yes.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Councilmember McCoy. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have the clerk call the vote. Call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan, Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, correspondence, communications, petitions, announcements, and the city manager report. We'll start with item 7.1, announce the vacancies on Lake Havasu City boards, committees, and commissions. Ms. Williams.
Mayor and City Council, there are several vacancies on Lake Havasu City boards, committees, and commissions. The following is a listing of the current and also the upcoming vacancies. Airport Advisory Board, 4 regular pilot members, 1 regular non-pilot member, 1 alternate pilot member, and 1 alternate non-pilot member. Board of Adjustment, 4 regular members, 3 alternate members. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, 2 regular members, 1 student member. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, 1 regular member and 2 alternate members. Anyone interested can pick up an application at City Hall, and they are also available on the city's website at www.lhcaz.gov.
Thank you. Item 7.2 is the city manager's report. Mr. Knudsen.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. Is my volume off or am I on? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Still getting used to this, the Zoom. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mayor Sheehy, you proclaimed the week of May 17th through May 23rd as the 60th Annual Public Works Week for Lake Havasu City and urged all citizens to join in recognizing the substantial contributions our public works professionals make in protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. This year's National Public Works theme, The Rhythm of Public Works, challenges citizens to think about their communities as a symphony of essential services, working in concert to create a great place to live. We are thankful to Greg Crossley and his team for keeping the rhythm moving in our city by providing an orchestra of essential services to maintain, protect, and improve our infrastructure. Mayor Sheehy, you proclaimed May 19th as Teacher of the Year Day in honor of Teacher of the Year recipient Andrea Montes. As an elementary special education teacher, Andrea has worked for Jamaica Elementary School for the past 14 years. And in that time, she has impacted many students' lives, and no doubt will impact many, many more. Congratulations to Ms. Montez for the outstanding achievement. Mayor Shi proclaimed Friday, May 22nd as EMS Recognition Day in Lake Havasu City as part of the 46th Annual National EMS Week. This year's theme is EMS Strong, Ready, Today, and Preparing for Tomorrow. Our EMS team provides vital public services to our community, ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you to Fire Chief Palafis and our fire department EMS professionals for all that you do for us on the front lines each and every day. On May 25th, Lake Havasu City residents gathered at the VFW Post 9401 to remember and honor those who bravely lost their lives and the men and women who were wounded or went missing fighting for peace during wartime throughout the span of our nation's history. Mayor Sheehy proclaimed Memorial Day in Lake Havasu City and urged everyone to continue honoring those who have died for our freedom and to thank the many men and women and veterans with us today for their service. Mayor Sheehy proclaimed Saturday, June 6th as Cancer Survivors Day in Lake Havasu City this year. Our city has a very active and productive cancer survivor population. And thanks to the Cancer Association of Havasu, the funds they raise each year provides programs including low-cost early detection screenings, public education, and support groups for the cancer survivors and their families. Prior to COVID-19, our city's Census Action Committee reached out to a few schools in the community to participate in our Everyone Counts 2020 census poster and coloring contest at the elementary school level and the essay contest at the junior high and high school levels. In an effort to reach busy parents and educate kids at the same time, the city offered these contests to encourage the students to talk to their parents about the census and remind them to respond for their households. By educating the kids now about census, we're helping to shape the future for years to come. Many posters and coloring sheets were submitted, and the winners are now displayed in our City Hall lobby. Contestants have been showing up and to receive their gift card prizes, and a few are shown here on the screen. The essay contest challenged junior high and high school students. Junior high students to write a 500-word essay, and the high school students to word a 650-word essay on the question of what is the census and how might it impact your family, your school, and your community. Congratulations to all the essay winners, but especially junior high school student Landon Wheeler, who sends his thanks from Alaska, as featured here on the screen, and high school student Alicia Medina for their first place submittals. Now, the next few slides will show some of the winners for the coloring contest and poster contests. We were hoping to have the kids here at a council meeting prior to all this happening. So we want to make sure that we recognize the kids for their efforts and congratulate them for the prizes that they won. This is Liliana Telerio. She won first place in second grade, and she represents Jamaica Elementary School. Mason Ani represents, he's a first grader and represents Oro Grande Elementary School. Aubrey Duras, a second grader from Atlas Elementary School. Nice job. Giselle Hernandez is a first grader at Havasu. Lila Zambrano is a second grader at Smoke Tree Elementary School. Very nice. Now we can take a look at some of the posters. Belly Ani is from Oro Grande Elementary School and won first place for Oro Grande Elementary School for this poster. Yoselin Rojas from Havasu submitted this poster and won first place. Thank you. And Marley Francis from Jamaica Elementary School submitted this poster and won first place as well. And then finally, Katie Fernung from Smoke Tree Elementary School won first place. So great job by all the participants. Congratulations to the winners. There was actual cash prizes for first through fourth place. Gift cards, as I was corrected here. We are currently at a 59.7 response rate for our census, which is above average, but we still have a ways to go. Remember that everyone counts, and we encourage everybody to check the box for Havasu by visiting www.my2020census.gov. And again, all these posters and pictures will be in the City Hall lobby. On June 1st, the Aquatic Center pool is open to summer swim lessons for children 6 months through 12 years old. Lessons are held in the evenings for 2 weeks, Monday through Thursday. Each session is $37 per child. Please register online at lhcaz.gov. On Monday, June 8th, Sunshine Summer Camp begins for children entering 1st through 6th grade. For those who are interested, registration takes place online only. So there will be no in-person registration taken this year, so online only. Registration begins on Monday, June 1st at 7 a.m. And participants are limited, much more so than previous years, to allow staff to follow CDC guidelines. The camp will be held at Jamaica, Nautilus, and Smoke Tree Elementary Schools. City staff continues to take excessive precautionary measures to maintain a safe and clean environment. Extensive cleaning and monitoring is routinely completed, and the program is restricting staff to child ratios in order to adhere to CDC guidelines. So that's 1 staff per 9 children for each of the classrooms. For more information on both programs, please contact our Parks and Recreation office at 928-453-8686. Mayor and Council, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Knudsen? All right, we'll move on to item 8, our public hearings. Item 8.1 is a presentation by Stifel, Nicholas and Company, Inc. for the review of the irrigation and drainage, water district, and water utility bonds and information in connection with special district legal alternatives. Mr. Knudsen.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with us this evening, we have Mr. Mark Reeder. He's gracious enough to provide us with a presentation through Zoom, and Jill Olson will be helping out with the PowerPoint presentation. But essentially what we're discussing here tonight, Mayor and Council, is the irrigation and drainage district. So this is a district that was formed long before Lake Havasu City was incorporated as a city. This is the funding mechanism that Robert McCulloch used to fund the initial infrastructure for Lake Havasu City. So the roads and the water lines and everything that was needed at that time, parks and golf course, et cetera, were all funded using the irrigation and drainage district. So what this is essentially a property tax assessment for the district. And since that time, over the course of last few decades, these dollars have been used to subsidize or provide funds for our water system. So the city provides a water system, which is a nonprofit water system. And right now we take in about roughly about $5.5 million per year. And but as Mr. Reeder will begin to talk about here shortly, and I'll stop stealing his thunder, is essentially that what are we going to do when the IDD expires? So Mr. Reeder is going to walk us through a couple of different scenarios, some options for us to discuss. There's no need for a decision at this time, but we want to share some information and get some thoughts going. And we thought, who better to provide this information than Mr. Reeder? So Mark, could you unmute? There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. And can everybody hear me okay? Great.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I think, as you all know, I've had the privilege of working with the city for many years on a lot of your bond issues and in connection with public infrastructure improvements. And I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you this evening to help educate you on a few topics here of interest to you. I think Ms. Olson's going to help me go ahead and turn to the table of contents. And there's several topics in here. I'm going to give you a little more history on the irrigation and drainage district. I know you're very familiar with that political subdivision, but I want to go back and give you a little more history and some statistics. I want to talk then about some potential alternatives. So in the event that district were to go away in the future or to no longer be around, what other options might be out there for the city to consider as an alternative to that entity. I'm going to talk to you about if a property tax entity does not continue, and the city has an interest in raising some utility rates to get some infrastructure done, we're going to talk really about how that works. And then I'm going to talk to you about some capital improvement plans in the event, financing alternatives in the event in the future, the city may need to issue some bonds to finance some very much needed public infrastructure in the community. I can take you to page 3. Next page, please. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. As Mr. Knutson mentioned, the district was formed almost 60 years ago. Time flies. The voters formed it prior to the incorporation. As you all know, it was kind of a hybrid way for the city to get started. It's the only one in the state that I'm aware of. The voters in 1978 voted to dissolve the IDD and incorporate the city in 1978. And by statute, the city council became the trustees for the IDD. In 1964, some bonds were issued at the time, as mentioned, for the purpose of completing some primarily water infrastructure improvements. The IDD was set up on a per acre tax. There's about 21,000 acres within the boundaries of the IDD, and there's a property tax levy, if you will, of $268 per acre that you're aware of. And that's generating somewhere, as Mr. Knutson said, somewhere around $5.5 to $5.7 million per year in operating revenues for the IDD, which has been the case really for many, many years. The levy continues and will continue until the bonds are redeemed. The bonds were refunded in 1993. They were stretched out way back in 1993 to extend the life of the IDD for the purpose of the operating levy primarily. And I'm going to share with you in a moment that debt is almost paid off. The city only has really about $30,000 remaining, with about $10,000 to be repaid here in about 60 days. So the debt is almost paid off. The operating tax levy final fiscal year, unless the debt is restructured, is fiscal year 21-22. Page 5, please. This is the amount of debt outstanding on the IDD. As mentioned, 4.1 million was issued back in 93, of which 30,000 is left, and the bonds can be callable, paid off at any time at par. Page 6. We thought we'd just share with you a little bit of statistical data on the IDD. The 1920 property tax base within the boundaries of the IDD is about 704 million on the left-hand side. And that shows you for every dollar of taxes that are levied within the boundaries of the IDD, the types of property classes that help pay for that annual $5.6, $5.7 million operating levy. Obviously, you're still very much a residential community, as indicated there on the left-hand side of the pie chart. About 42.6% of owner-occupied residential property, and about 35.6% of residential, primarily rental properties. And then you can see about 16.6% for commercial and a little bit of ag. So we just wanted to share that property classification analysis with you that shows you that for every dollar of taxes that are levied in your community, the type of property that pays it. On the right-hand side of the IDD is the number of parcels. Obviously, the city has grown tremendously over the years, and you can see up there in the green bar that there's 39,943 parcels of land within the boundaries of your IDD. Page 7 is a comparison really to the city. And as you can see here, on a property classification basis, you're about 739 million, very, very close to the IDD. And on the right-hand side, the city's larger by about 2,000 pieces of property. So basically shows you that they're near coterminous boundaries with each other. So we wanted to share that with council kind of as a reminder. Next page, please, Ms. Olson. Thank you. As mentioned, the per acre tax within the boundaries of the IDD has been set consistently at $268.85 per acre. At about 21,000 acres times $2.68 an acre generates down in the right-hand column about $5.7 million per year in the operating budget. Page 9, the council is very familiar with this. The city levies a primary property tax at about 67 cents per $100 of assessed value. And you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, that generates close to about $5 million in primary property tax revenues for the city's budget that can be utilized for operating purposes. So that kind of just shares with you for council a little more history and a little reminder on the tax rates that we know that you're very familiar with already. In section B here on the next page, we wanted to highlight for council a couple of different new, if you will, living, breathing political subdivisions that the city could consider forming in the future, in the event at some point in time the IDD were to go away or would terminate in terms of its existence. And when we create these new living, breathing political subdivisions within Arizona, they're very complicated. And we're going to share two of them here with you, and you'll see what I mean. If the city wanted to, they could form what's known as a community facilities district. It is a living, breathing political subdivision formed by the city for the purpose of, generally speaking, financing public infrastructure around the state for our master plan communities and for commercial projects and utility projects. And that is how they're commonly used around the state. As indicated in number 1, it requires a petition signed by owners of at least 25% of the land area. Then a public hearing would be held, after which an election may be held of the landowners and the qualified voters. And so obviously the community has to be very engaged in the formation of a community facilities district if one was to be formed. And on the maintenance and operation side of the equation, under the statute, the city can levy an ad valorem property tax for maintenance and operation purposes only, equivalent to 30 cents per $100 of assessed value. And that's limited by statute, okay? In addition, bonds can be voted in, and property tax bonds can be sold for purposes of financing public infrastructure. So as indicated there in item number 2, if the city were to form a community facilities district, the boundaries of which would be coterminous with the city boundaries, we estimate that the property tax levy revenues from the formation of a CFD would generate about $2.2 million, again, limited to the 30 cents per 100. Recognizing you're getting about 5.7 now. So the statute limits that revenue stream if a CFD was to be formed. In talking to the attorneys, that we feel that there is a nexus requirement with the city that could be met in terms of joint ownership relative to water related purposes. So we don't think that's a problem. Number 4, the board of directors of a community facilities district as we speak would consist of the city council and 2 outside board members. And so the 2 outside board members is something relatively new that has become problematic for us in the state due to insurance and other related issues. And we do have a bill at the legislature that would potentially eliminate or give the option of having the 2 outside board members or eliminating them wherein the city council would be the board of directors. I know the legislative session is in pause, and I'm not sure where that bill is as it relates to that matter. If a community facilities district was formed, as I mentioned to you, that special district also has the power under the statute to issue general obligation bonds, bonds secured and repaid by property taxes, water revenue bonds, or special assessment bonds for public infrastructure improvements. The boundaries determined by the city council and would not include unincorporated areas. So they would have to be within the boundaries of the city. So this would certainly be one option for you. I just wanted to share with the city council that we've done a number of these around the state, primarily for the purpose of financing public infrastructure, as I mentioned, for master plan communities and for some commercial related projects. So we kind of wanted to share a brief summary with you on page 11. Page 12. Another potential alternative, again, a living, breathing political subdivision, is called a revitalization district. It is a special district that would be formed by the city. It requires a petition signed by at least 51% of the property owners that would participate in the district, and then a public hearing after which the district may be formed. So again, a very collaborative process, requires the people that would participate, the property owners that would participate, to all in all, hopefully coming in willingly and understanding what the implications are. Number two, we feel that there's an appropriate nexus requirement for water, which would work. The boundaries would be determined by the city and could include unincorporated areas. That's where this one's a little different than this community facilities district. So could go outside the boundaries. Number four has been somewhat problematic. The board of directors in connection with this living, breathing political subdivision would consist of outside board of directors, not the city council. Okay, there's some insurance issues. Number six, the operating tax levy, okay, needs to be voted on by landowners and qualified electors relative to the formation process. And under the statute, there are no limits as to an ad valorem operating tax levy. Whereas there's a 30-cent operating levy with a community facilities district under the statute, there are no property tax, if you will, ad valorem tax levy limits. Under the statute, this particular district could also issue special assessment bonds and revenue bonds for public infrastructure improvements, but no general obligation bonds could be issued under the statute. So this is a relatively new living, breathing political subdivision. There has only been one formed in the state. I think two formed in the state. The city of Flagstaff did form one primarily for the purpose of downtown redevelopment purposes, in which the property owners agreed to a tax levy to be used primarily for economic development related purposes. So I wanted to share the CFD option and the revitalization district option, both of which, as you know, and as you can tell here, can be challenging political subdivisions to form. Page 13, please. So looking back on the IDD, it's been a very interesting and has a very unique history in your city over the past many years. I think it's been 57 years, not 40, because I think it was formed in 63. A state law was enacted that allowed Lake Havasu to incorporate, based on the existence of the IDD and the sanitary district, as an alternative method to incorporation, as Mr. Knutson said, and as we talked about earlier. This state law deemed the city council as trustees for the IDD and the sanitary district pending dissolution. The laws to create and operate an IDD no longer exist in state statutes, and therefore we cannot recreate another IDD. And number four, we hope you find of helpful as well, and you're already picking up on, is that the process of creating a new special type, a new special district for the purposes of levying tax or assessment will be complex, time consuming, and uncertain as to its outcome. So we just kind of wanted to kind of go back and give you another brief overview in the unique history of the IDD and a couple of special districts as an alternative to the city in the event the IDD would go away and you want to create another living, breathing political subdivision for the purpose of levying taxes. As it relates to the potential in the future, if you needed to raise water rates or if you needed to raise wastewater utility rates to help fund some public improvements, there's what they call a Title IX process that we've kind of outlined here. The process starts with a written economic and revenue plan, essentially a business plan that would be required to be completed by an independent rate consultant, and it would indicate and suggest the rate increase requirements associated with the public policy needs of the city. So essentially, we'd complete a business plan, a business model, and it would highlight the revenue increases. It would then be placed on file with the city clerk. It would be placed on the city's website at least 30 days prior to a public hearing. A public hearing would then be required, which would take place at least 60 days from the adoption of a notice of intention to raise rates. If you went that route, there would be a public hearing regarding the resolution to increase fees and charges, and your revenue increase would essentially go into effect about 30 days later. So in the event in the future, the city would need to raise water or wastewater rates. It's called a Title IX utility rate increase. It's right out of statute, and it takes us somewhere between 90 and 120 days to implement. So I just wanted to remind the council of that requirement if the city were to go down that route in the future. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll take a pause there before I get into some financing alternatives for consideration. I'm glad to answer any questions that the council might have up to this point.
Yeah, thank you. So are these the only two options that we have? Is there another special district that we could put in that basically just replaces the IDD as it stands today?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in talking to the bond attorneys relative to the creation of a new living, breathing political subdivision outside the IDD, those are the only two conceptually that they've come up with, that we've come up with for consideration, unless of course we wanted to go to the legislature and make some legislative changes. So, we'll continue to try to flush this out, but these were the two primary special districts outside the IDD that we've come up with up to this point.
Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Reader?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Vice Mayor Lane?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reader. I appreciate the information. It's very knowledgeable. And I have a question. On one of your first slides, you said we have 39,843 pieces of property within the boundaries of the current IDD. And when the IDD was formed, the city was much smaller than it is now. And those boundaries are different than what our city limits are. Do you know how many pieces of property would actually be paying into some sort of district should we go with that route?
Mr. Vice Mayor Lane, so yeah, you're right. On page 6 of our PowerPoint presentation, we had the 39,943 as presently exists. In terms of number of parcels, and that number changes every year, as you know, based on splits and new growth and all that. So if we were to create some form of new political subdivision, the number of parcels that would be incorporated into the special district would be a function of the boundaries. Okay? So if we were to make it coterminous with the boundaries of the IDD, we would have the same number of parcels. Does that make sense?
It does. I just didn't think we had the amount of parcels that are currently within the boundaries of the IDD district are the same as what they are as far as our city boundaries are. Maybe I was mistaken. Mr. Knudsen, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Lane, it looks like if you go to page 7, would the number be 41,187? So that the difference is between those two. So it's about 2,000 parcels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if we did have a different district, there'd be an additional 2,000 parcels of land that would be paying into the district than what we have right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mr.
That answers my question.
Then to add that, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, to add that a little bit to the difference between the two slides that Mr. Reader has there that talks about the property tax classification versus the IDD. You can look at the total assessment and it'll show you that the dollar value and assessment between the two as well too. So it'll give you an idea of the difference in parcels, but also the difference in the total assessment.
Okay, very good.
May I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Grow.
Thank you, sir. I'm just curious if we're prohibited by statute to look at the mechanism of an extendable bond, something like a puttable bond, if you will, which allows investors to take advantage of a fixed interest rate that's attractive in a declining interest environment.
Yes, sir. This Mark Reader, are you referring to whether or not the city with its current debt obligations would have the opportunity to refinance out some of its bonds? Or
Yes.
just the IDD bond?
Just the IDD bond.
Okay. Yeah, so if the city was interested in refinancing out the IDD bond, if you go back to page 5, thank you, Ms. Olson. These are the bonds that we have outstanding. And as you all know, we've got the 10,000 coming off the books on July 120 in about 30 days. See that? So the bonds that will be outstanding will only be 20,000 in about 30 days. And down below, it allows us to call those bonds at any time. We can pay those bonds off, as you know, at any time at par with no penalty. And the investors would get their money back and we move on. If there was a consideration to potentially extend the amortization of this IDD, we would also have the ability under the call feature here in which to do that. I hope that answered your question.
It does. I was just thinking, I don't think we have a very good option here. I was just wondering whether or not we could functionally do like a dilution issue on the stock, but being that it's a bond mechanism, I think we are precluded from it. So it was, in hindsight, a silly question, but thank you for being kind in your explanation.
Oh, no problem. No silly questions. Okay, very good. So thank you for your questions. I know this is kind of a pretty dry subject. Hope that history and those potential alternatives were of interest to you and help to you. The next page here, if I could, Ms. Olson. So going forward, and I looked at the city's capital improvement plan. As you all know, public infrastructure wears out, unfortunately. And you've been blessed to have a wastewater system that's pretty new. And the assets are, as I understand it, very good shape. And you've got some water system improvements that you're also probably going to need to do at some point. Things wear out. So what staff had asked me to do is give you kind of a quick overview. Under state law, if the city was unable to pay cash for its capital improvements, that's oftentimes difficult. when capital improvement needs get into the millions, as you all know, for our communities, not only in Havasu, but around the state. So this is a grid or kind of a financing alternatives grid. We've shared this with council in the past. I'll go through it with you real quick and give you a couple examples. One alternative the city has is to go to a bond election like you did when you passed the $400 million bond election for the wastewater system way back when. The city electorate approved those bonds to complete a much needed centralized wastewater system for your community, and those bonds were approved. Those bonds are revenue bonds, but they were required to have a property tax backing that we've never had to trigger. Because of your good stewardship, we restructured the bonds, as you all know, and the bonds continue to be repaid on the wastewater side of the equation entirely through the revenues generated from wastewater, and the same with your water. So no property taxes have been levied to date to repay this type of a bond. But essentially, the city would be required to have an election to be held every November, only one time a year. An amount would be approved, and if it's approved, bonds would be issued. The proceeds of the bonds would be used to finance your water or your wastewater public infrastructure improvements, and a property tax will be levied on the entire city to help pay for the public infrastructure for those utilities. Okay? Very similar to the school bonds, as we all vote on the local school bonds over the years. That is the only alternative they have, and when we vote in our school bonds, we levy a property tax, what's known as a secondary property tax. Requires at least 50% approval plus one. And the amount of taxes paid, as you all know, is a function of the property tax rate and the value of the property that we all own in our community. I'm going to show you a grid in a moment to help you with that. Under Arizona law, our cities and towns are limited in their bonding capacity limit to 26% of the net full cash assessed value. I'm going to show you what yours is in a moment. You have substantial bonding capacity if you ever want to pursue that option. I've worked with Havasu for many years, and I understand that property taxes aren't generally the approach that you want to go, but we did want to share with you and remind you of the general obligation, secondary property tax, bond, and related levy. The other way that we've issued bonds for your city is through water utility revenue bonds, or we go through the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, either way. And that is essentially a debt obligation that would be repaid from the operating revenues of the water system or the wastewater system. They do not require, generally speaking, voter approval. The WIF alternative is an alternative we always look at, especially if they have some potential grant monies. And we have been able to get some grant monies from them depending upon the situation, and something that we would obviously look closely into if we were to pursue some form of a borrowing for Lake Havasu City. So as the name implies, and as we have done for you historically on both the wastewater side and the water side, we have issued water utility revenue bonds and WIFA loans over the years. Another option that's commonly used by cities and towns, if they have some budget capacity, and we know our city's budgets are are under a lot of pressure, a lot of demands on our budget, as you all know. And if a city has some budget capacity to repay a bond payment, it is not uncommon for our cities to issue what's known as excise tax revenue bonds, which are bonds payable back from the general fund, essentially, and secured by your local sales tax revenues and your state shared revenues. Voter approval is not required. They are commonly used in Arizona. They are very efficient and very well accepted by investors. So we will do those from time to time to secure and repay bonds for water or wastewater utility public infrastructure. The last one that we just wanted to highlight, we did one of these for your city years ago. I want to say it was downtown, and that's the creation of an improvement district in which property owners generally will come to the city and they will ask the city for helping them finance public infrastructure. And the property owners would benefit from that public infrastructure, and they would help pay an allocated special assessment based on the benefit they receive for purposes of the public infrastructure. So you might have a downtown redevelopment project. They want to beautify downtown. The downtown property owners are in favor of this. They partner with the city. It's an amazing economic development tool for the right type of project. We just did one up in Bullhead City that was very successful for about $4 million that ran a road up to Laughlin Ranch from the main thoroughfare down on the river. And it opened up an economic area for development, and it freed up some pretty significant traffic issues. So the city in that case partnered with 4 property owners for the purpose of economic development and for road improvements that benefited not only the city, but the property owners as well. And the property owners were allocated a special assessment based on their benefit of that new and improved road. Does that make sense? So it's a very nice economic development tool. If you had somebody that wanted to hook onto your wastewater system or your water system, and infrastructure was needed in order to do that, it may be a tool in the toolbox for us to consider in the future. So we kind of wanted to put this on here just to give you a quick reminder. But the other 4 on top are the more common methods of financing public infrastructure for our cities and towns in Arizona for water and wastewater. Okay, page 17. Thank you, Ms. Olson. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we just wanted to remind you and share the amount of debt that you have outstanding for the IDD for your water public infrastructure, which is very minimal. On the right-hand side, the city has about $4.7 million in outstanding bonds. Actually, they're WIFA loans. We got 462 coming off the books in 30 days. So now we're down to about 4.3 million. So the city has done a very good job of paying down your debt over time, not only on the water side of the equation, but on the wastewater side of the equation as well. So you can see what your debt profile is here. We think there might be some opportunities to refinance out some of this down the road as you manage your water utility rates and charges. We'll share a few ideas on that, but I think it's a good graphic that shows that you don't have a lot of water utility debt at the moment. So good job on that. On page 18, just wanted to share with you your debt service on those obligations currently is about $600,000 a year. And then you can see out in 28, it goes all the way down to about 200. So in the event, if you needed to do a debt offering, we'd wrap that debt around this debt service structure and try to minimize whatever increase that would be, depending upon the timing of when you wanted to get some things done. So we wanted to share your annual debt service of the water WIFA loans that you have outstanding that are being repaid from the operating revenues of the IDD. Next page, thank you. Okay, real quick. Sorry for all the numbers here. I'm going to take you to the bottom. I shared with you in the financing alternatives grid earlier that if a city were to pursue a general obligation bond election to finance water or wastewater or other infrastructure improvements, and they wanted to ask the voters to increase property taxes in connection therewith, that you're limited by statute by what's known as a 20% test in the middle there, which is water, sewer, light, parks, open space, transportation, and public safety purposes at 20%. So you have down below in the green, almost $100 million of 20% capacity available. Okay, in the event you want to utilize this option. In addition to that, you have a 6% category, which would be more for general improvements at another 61 million. So essentially you have close to $160 million of statutory bonding capacity in the event you want to access this tool in the toolbox. Okay. And you can see down below on the bonds, 108 million outstanding on the wastewater bonds. That's what that is. And again, a property tax has never been levied on the wastewater side of the equation. So we want to just give you that good news, if you will, that you have plenty of capacity with this option if it was something you wanted to pursue in the future. All righty. On page 20, so we just wanted to run kind of a pro forma scenario for you. Not even suggesting that you'll pursue this, but again, just as an update. If you look in the first column, that's our fiscal year, and your assessed value, which is the value that you levy property taxes with, right now is $738,991,584. You've probably seen that number in your budget meetings. That's the number used by the Mojave County Assessor's Office to levy property taxes, either primary or secondary. Okay? Budget year 2021, forthcoming. You've probably seen this number in your budget deliberations. The county has indicated that for budget year 2021, your tax base grew by 6.35%. That's a preliminary number, doesn't generally change that much when levies are set by the Mojave County Board in August. So the good news is your economy was growing. Hopefully will continue to grow as we figure out COVID-19, but you're 6.35% up this year. As you can see in column 2, we assumed that you would have no increase in your tax base, which, as you all know, we're probably going to see an increase, but we assume no growth to be conservative. We assume that you would issue a $10 million general obligation bond for purposes of public infrastructure improvements. We assume that you would amortize those bonds over 25 years at 3% money, 3-4% money, okay? And that your annual debt service in column 6 would be about $575,000 a year annually to repay that debt, spread out over 25 years to allow for future generations to help pay for public infrastructure that lasts many years, as you all know. So what is the estimated tax rate implications for every $10 million your city would issue? As you can see in column 7, we're estimating about 7 cents per $100 of assessed valuation for every $10 million of bonds that you would go to the voters and ask for approval. Okay, relatively simple math, relatively simple amortization schedule, a tax levy at 7 cents per year. Okay, what does that mean to the average homeowner in Lake Havasu? Page 20, I think 22, Ms. Olson, thank you. Page 21 has a number of assumptions that you can see that we use. All right, so on 22, if we plug the 7 cents per $100 into the property classification grid, and this is what would be included in the voter information pamphlet. As you all know, we have a pretty complicated property tax system in Arizona. And if you're a residential property owner, your property is assessed at 10%. If you're a commercial property owner in Arizona, your property is assessed by the county assessor at 18%. And if you're a property owner of agricultural and vacant property, your property is assessed at 15%. That's why we have these 3 boxes. So to keep it relatively simple, as it relates to a residential homeowner within your community, we're calculating that the average value based on the county value, not necessarily fair market value of a home within the boundaries of your city approximates $186,192. That's an average value calculation. If we apply the 7 cents tax rate to the average value of a residential home for a $10 million bond issue, it would result in a $13.10 annual cost to that homeowner, or $1.09 per month for every $10 million of authorization. Okay. So if you had 20 million, it'd be $2.18. So we just kind of, and then the commercial property, the average value at 460, and the agricultural folks, they pay the least there, as you can see, at about 36 cents per month, with a commercial property at about $4.86 per month. So we kind of want to just share with you, the math, the simple math, if a property tax bond was ever to be considered for public infrastructure improvements in your community. Okay, 23. Oh, more footnotes. 24. So before I finish up in Appendix D here, I'll just finish Appendix D and then I'll go ahead and answer any questions. In Appendix D, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just wanted to give you a reminder. The city's done a really good job of paying down your wastewater debt. If you look in the right-hand corner, we're going to pay off another almost $5 million here in 30 days, right? You're down to about 200 million on your wastewater debt. And so you've done a really good job. That was a huge project for your city. It was a legacy project. It was a game changer. It was very much needed. It was very expensive. I had the privilege of working with you on it. And if you remember, our bond election was 463 million. We never issued that much because of cost efficiencies. And you're down to about 200 million for a centralized wastewater system for your community. So that's all in all very good news. You're doing a good job of chipping away at the hill, as they say, chopping the hill down. And on the next page here, real quick, Jill, just again as a reminder, your annual debt service of the wastewater is about $13.8 million a year, level debt service through 45 as a result of the restructuring that we did. So with that, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I hope that was helpful. And I thank you for the opportunity to give you this outline, and I'm glad to answer any questions that the city council might have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reader. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. All right, Mr. Reader, thank you. This is we've actually started the conversation a couple of years ago about what our options are. So it's very helpful to have a refresh on different options available to us through state statute, and then also some bonding capacities. So we'll continue to have work sessions and council meetings to decide what is in the best interest to move forward with a variety of different options. So thank you for being here. Unless any members of the council, Councilmember McCoy?
Yes, I just wanted to say, Mr. Reader, thank you so much for this. I was on the council towards the end when we did our big WIFA sewer thing. And believe me, I remember the horrible time we went through with that, but you made it much easier in working with the council at that time. We were able to negotiate something that was great for all of our citizens. So I want to thank you very much for your hard work then, and also for what you're brought out for us to consider today. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments before we move on to the next item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
If I can, I just want to reiterate the fact that this is something that through readers' research and some of the data these pulled down, that the expiration of the IDD in its current state occurs in that fiscal year 21-22. So we essentially been talking about July 1st, 2023 as the last as when the IDD would end, or when it would sunset. So we're now talking about 1 year before that. So we have less time than we've talked about in the past. So I just want to make sure that council and the public understands that the timing of the IDD and when that expires is going to come in 2022. So that is the last time that we'll have the ability as a city to collect those funds for our water system. Thank you.
I had a question, if I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Grow.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the information. Under the most likely mechanisms of funding, if I'm to understand you correctly, you're saying essentially we could expect approximately the cost of about $1 to a homeowner and a cost of about $5 to a commercial property. That's on a per month basis per 10 million of financing capacity. And we have a lot of headway to do that, pretty large, because we've been fiscally conservative as a council, and we've taken good care of our books, if you will. Sometimes bonds have ratings on them, and I'm just curious, you used assumptions, and I was paying careful attention to your assumptions, but in particular your rates. Can you tell me what your thinking is on that on a go forward basis, and what ratings, if any? In other words, you just did one in Bullhead, for example. I assume that's a matter of public record. And could you give us an idea of sort of what that looks like?
Yeah, Mr. Brown, members of the council, thank you. Maybe I'll just start. I hope this is helpful with your current ratings. You're a double A rated city on your wastewater, AA minus rated city on your wastewater senior lien debt, in which you have a general obligation bond backing that we've never triggered, right? That was kind of a double barreled, if you will, safety provision that was required way back at the time. So if you issue general obligation bonds now, my guess is this is pre-COVID, so bear with us on that, but you're a AA minus Standard & Poor's rated city with a general obligation bond sale. All right. So I hope that's helpful.
No, agree. Yeah.
Might I just say that being a AA minus S&P rated municipality, for the purposes of people watching and the rest of the people here, can you say how that might compare to some other cities around Arizona?
If I could compare your city to some others, I would say, a city of your size, it depends on the city. I don't have the other cities' credit ratings in front of me right now, but it would really depend upon a variety of factors. I would say most cities with similar population and a similar budget would be more in the high A category, whereas in the way that the city structured your transaction on the big transaction that resulted in a AA minus, we got an upgrade as a result of the way we structured the transaction, the city's conservative budget policy, the management of the city, and all the underlying economics and budgets on the positive side of the equation for your city. So I think I hope that's helpful to you.
It is helpful. I just want people to hear that, because we are stronger financially. We have a higher rating. A AA minus is higher than an A. That makes it more attractive for investors, which makes it easier for us to actually execute the financing to the benefit of our people.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Your bonds would be, if you were to issue just traditional general obligation bonds, your bonds would be very well received in the marketplace for the reasons I mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. So to recap kind of the discussion that we had is the irrigation and drainage district it provides currently about $5.7 million to our water infrastructure. And with that sunsetting, we have to look at a few different options. So at the beginning of Mr. Reader's presentation, he gave us two options that seem to be the most doable without getting legislative action to change the way it could be. There's also a further discussion where we can talk about what the rates look like to make up that $5.7 million. And then in the second half of his presentation this evening, were different mechanisms for bonding and or finance alternatives if we weren't going to do that. But the part in the second part of the presentation, it is not going to fill in for not having the IDD or those budget dollars. So that's kind of a big recap today, was to give a presentation to council of a variety of different options that are available. And then we can continue to have this discussion a little bit further. As the council knows, we also have a rate study that is planned, that we can take a look at those avenues as well. And then of course have public engagement and public comment over a long period of time, which Mr. Knudsen just described as a little bit shorter of a long period of time now that it's a year earlier, but we'll be able to have those conversations and be able to move forward. So Mr. Knudsen, do you have any final comments before we move on?
No, that was a fantastic recap. I guess the one last bit of information, if I can, out there, Mr. Reader, we've had this conversation before, so I already know the answer to the question, but maybe for everybody else's benefit, how many cities in Arizona utilize some type of a district to supplement or to fund their water and wastewater systems? Do you know of any other city that's out there?
I'm trying to think here. There are very, very few.
I didn't mean to kind of put you on the spot, but I guess the point there is that it's a very unique situation for a water or wastewater system to be funded through some type of a property tax assessment. Normally, it is assessed based on usage.
Yep, I think that's pretty well said. And I work all around the state, and you can tell I paused there. I was trying to remember of another city that had this unique district, and off the top of my head, I can't think of another one that does.
Thank you, Mr. Reader. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reader. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you bet. Talk soon. Thank you very much.
Take care. All right, we'll move on to item 8.2. To get reorganized here. Longer than I thought. All right, so item 8.2 is a Series 6 bar liquor license for Desert Martini at 2120 McCulloch Boulevard. Ms. Williams.
City Council, Lori McKim has applied for a Series 6 bar liquor license for Desert Martini located at 2120 McCulloch Boulevard. All posting requirements have been met, all fees have been paid, and no objections were received. The applicant is also joining us today via Zoom to answer any questions from the council.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And thank you, Ms. McKim, for your patience and joining us this afternoon. Do any members of the council have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Lori, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't.
All right, well, this is a public hearing, so we do have to open it up for the public hearing. Again, we were receiving public input via the city clerk's office at cityclerk@lhcaz.gov via email 1 hour prior to the meeting. We did not receive any public comment for this item, so I will close the public hearing.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Councilmember McCoy?
motion, please.
Yes.
I move to recommend that the Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control approve a series number 6 bar liquor license for Desert Martini, 2120 McCulloch Boulevard.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember McCoy and we have a second from Councilmember Dolan. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Kalshihi.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations, Lori, and thank you for your patience this evening.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8.3 is a Series 10 beer and wine beer and wine store liquor license for Family Dollar Store number 26559, located at 90 Acoma Boulevard North. Ms. Williams.
Mayor and City Council, Raphael Pichet has applied for a Series 10 beer and wine store liquor license for Family Dollar Store number 26559, located at 90 Acoma Boulevard North. All posting requirements have been met, all fees have been paid, and no objections were received. The location is properly zoned for a Series 10 liquor license, and the applicant is also available and joining us by Zoom today to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do any of the members of the council have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Pichet, would you like to say anything?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, though.
All right. Thank you for being here. All right. This is a public hearing. So again, we'll open up the public hearing. We are accepting public input during these meetings via the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. For this item, we have not received any public input. I'll now close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, motion?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Lane.
I move to recommend that the Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control approve a series number 10 beer and wine store liquor license for Family Dollar Store number 26559, 90 Acoma Boulevard North.
Second.
All right, that was a race. We have a motion from Vice Mayor Lane and a second from Councilmember Koch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan, Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Kalshihi.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Pichet. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right, moving on to item 8.4 is adopt resolution number 20-3392, authorizing the submission of application for federal fiscal year 2019 and federal fiscal year 2020 community development block grant funds from the state special projects account and authorizing all actions necessary to implement and complete the activities outlined in the application. Ms. Marin?
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Holly Morin, the Grants Administrator for the city. This item relates to community development block grant funding from the state special projects account. Arizona Department of Housing requires that this item be a public hearing item, which is open to the public for comment. We are submitting an application to Arizona Department of Housing for this funding totaling $500,000 to be used for owner-occupied housing rehabilitation within city limits for low-income homeowners. Homeowners must meet income and homeownership requirements in order to qualify for housing rehabilitation assistance. Home repair is essential to improve accessibility for disabled persons and to improve the quality of the housing stock. Anyone interested in applying for housing rehabilitation can obtain an application on the city website, in the City Hall lobby, or by contacting me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mrs. Marin? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing. And again, we're taking public input via the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. And we have not received any input or public comment on this item either. I will now close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor Lane.
a motion?
Yes, please.
I move to adopt resolution number 20-3392, authorizing the submission of an application for federal fiscal year 2019 and federal fiscal year 2020 CDBG SSP funds, and authorizing all actions necessary to implement and complete the activities outlined in the application.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Lane and a second from Councilmember McCoy. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call for the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Coke,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 8.4, adopt resolution number 20-3404, declaring as a public record and adopting by reference a fiscal sustainability policy. Ms. Olson?
Thank you. Good evening, council and mayor. Yeah, the item before you is for council to adopt a more current fiscal sustainability policy. It was last adopted in 2007. So this version, we've gone through and updated terminology and made sure we've got best business practices included in the policy. Probably two primary areas where we made changes. There's a statement in there that previously council would set the maximum number of full-time equivalents allowed for the city to have at any certain time or a fiscal year. And instead of having a cap on the full-time equivalents or FTEs, staff is recommending that the budget dollar cap that's set when you adopt the budget be that cap rather than the number of FTEs. That will provide more flexibility for the city manager to actually set the city services and adapt things to what is needed for the services at that time. The other area is in the budget stabilization reserve for the general fund. Previously, the policy had stated that 15% of the average actual fund revenues for the most recent 5 fiscal years would be used to set the budget stabilization reserve for the fund. Due to the nature of our highest income producing revenue in the general fund, which is sales tax, and the fact that it is more volatile than some other categories of revenue, staff is recommending a 25% average actual fund revenue for the most recent 5 fiscal years be applicable to the general fund. For the water fund, the wastewater fund, and the highway user revenue fund, we're recommending that council still set those at the 15% level. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Do any members of the council have any questions for Ms. Olson? All right, I appreciate you bringing this forward to us to update that. Obviously, in these uncertain times, it's good to have a document that is more reflective of what we're doing today. So thank you for doing that. This is a public hearing. And again, we're taking public comment and public input via the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. And we did not receive any public input on this item this evening. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this item.
Mayor,
Councilmember Koch?
motion?
Yes.
I move to adopt resolution 20-3404, declaring as a public record and adopting by reference a fiscal sustainability policy.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Councilmember Dolan. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Coke,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Item 8.6 is approve cooperative purchase agreement with United Fire Equipment Company and the use of contingency funds from the general fund for the additional funding to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. Chief Loftus.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. This item before you is approval to the cooperative agreement with United Fire Company and the use of contingency funds to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus, which is an essential tool for our firefighters during structure fires and IDLH atmospheres. Just a little bit of background. We received grant funding from the Assistant Firefighter Grant in an amount of roughly $418,000 for 61 SCBAs. We did initially get a put in a grant approval for 101 SCBAs, but due to the grant funding, they reduced it. So this is going to help us with the shortfall of purchasing the needed items for a one-time upgrade. This is an investment for approximately 15 years for these items. So it's a capital project, and we're looking for approval for this one-time upgrade of our SCBA units using contingency funds to make the purchase whole.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions for the chief? Yeah, Chief, just for clarification, so we'll still be getting 61 with the grant funding, and then the use of contingency funds is to make us whole, so we have the full 101 that we need to have a one-time replacement.
Yes, Mayor, we're actually going to be purchasing 92. We did a reevaluation of the needs of the department, and 92 is the needs of the department. There'll actually be 61 to purchase through the grant purchase, and then the rest will be purchased through using contingency funds.
Thank you. Yeah, it's obviously a prudent move to use the funds and have them all on the same cycle instead of having any of the safety equipment on different cycles. So do any members of the council have any questions or comments before we open the public hearing? All right, again, this is a public hearing and we're accepting public input at these meetings via the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. And we did not receive any public comment on this item. I'll now close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Vice Mayor Lane?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I move to approve the use of contingency funds available in the general fund for the purchase of SCBA's not to exceed 130,000 and approve execution of cooperative purchase agreement utilizing City of Tempe, Arizona contract T17-046-01 through June 18, 2020 with United Fire Equipment Company, authorize the city manager to execute the agreement and authorize city staff to execute any additional renewal options.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion from Vice Mayor Lane and a second from Councilmember Koch, from Grote is what I believe I heard. So Vice Mayor Lane made the motion and Councilmember Grote the second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Item 8.7 is approve the sole source purchases of various Pierce Fire apparatus parts and accessories through Hughes Fire Equipment Inc., exceeding $50,000 for fiscal year 1920. Mr. Frosley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good evening. The Hughes Fire Equipment is based out of Phoenix, and they are an authorized vendor for Pierce Fire vehicles and apparatus and accessories. The fire department's fleet consists of or includes 6 vehicles or fire trucks that were manufactured by Pierce Fire. 5 of those were purchased in 2014. So they came off the manufacturer's warranty this year. So our spending increased with Hughes significantly. At the time, from July 1st through the time when this council communique was authored, we had spent $43,470. So we were getting close to that $50,000 threshold. Since then, we purchased a radiator for one of the trucks, which was an additional $600. So we're within $500 right now of our $50,000 threshold. We've got just over a month to go before the end of the fiscal year. So we're here asking for permission to exceed $50,000 if we need it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Frosley. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Frosley? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing, and I'll now open that. Again, we're taking public comment through the city clerk's office by emailing cityclerk@lhcaz.gov, and we have not received any public comment on this item. I'll now close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, motion.
Yes, Councilmember McCoy.
I move to approve the sole source purchase of various replacement parts and accessories for Pierce Fire apparatus vehicles and equipment exceeding $50,000 for fiscal year 2019 to 2020 from Hughes Fire Department, Inc.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion from Councilmember McCoy and a second from Councilmember Grote. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, if you could call the vote.
Councilmember Jenny Koch,
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon Grote,
Aye.
Councilmember Michelle Lynn,
Aye.
Councilmember Donna McCoy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jim Dolan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor David Lane,
Aye.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9 is current events. Do any council members have any council committee reports? It's not an official committee, but I think it's important to note today, we had our blitz testing for COVID-19 here in Lake Havasu City. That was conducted on May 16th. We received the results today, and there was 377 total tests that were conducted during the Lake Havasu City blitz testing. Of that, one confirmed Lake Havasu City resident, one case from a Lake Havasu City resident, and then 2 confirmed cases from La Paz County residents. So of the 377 tests that were conducted on our blitz day, we had 1 Lake Havasu City resident, and that was just released this afternoon. So, all right, with no other council committee reports, we'll move on to item 10, our future meetings. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. It's a regular meeting, and we'll also be having our tentative budget and CIP adoption will be occurring at that meeting. And then on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020 at 6 p.m., we'll have a regular meeting, and that will be a final budget adoption as well. Item 11 is future discussion items. Do any council members have any future discussion items? All right, item 12 is adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn from Vice Mayor Lane and a second from Councilmember Dolan. Thank you, everyone. Be kind. We are adjourned.